Hi friends, today we're reading Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Chapter 15, The Chocolate Room. An important room, this, cried Mr. Wonka, taking a bunch of keys from his pocket and slipping one into the keyhole of the door. This is the nerve center of the whole factory and the heart of the whole business, and so beautiful. I insist upon my rooms being beautiful. I can't abide ugliness in the factories. In we go then. But do be careful, my dear children. Don't lose your heads. Don't get overexcited. Keep very calm. Mr. Wonka opened the door. 5 children and 9 grown-ups pushed their way in, and oh, what an amazing sight it was, and that now met their eyes. They were looking down upon a lovely valley. There were green meadows on either side of the valley, and along the bottom it flowed a great brown river. What is more, there was a tremendous waterfall halfway around the river, a steep cliff over which the water curled and rolled in a solid sheet, and then went crashing down into a boiling, churning whirlpool of froth and spray. Below the waterfall, and this was the most astonishing of all, a whole mass of enormous glass pipes were dangling down into the center of somewhere high up in the ceiling. They really were enormous, these pipes. There must have been a dozen of them at least, and they were sucking up this brownish, muddy water where the river from the river and carrying away its goodness to who knows where. And because they were made of glass, you could see the liquid flowing and bubbling inside them. And above the nose of the waterfall, you could hear the never-ending sucking sound of the pipes as they did their work. Graceful trees and bushes were growing alongside the riverbank, weeping willows and adlers and tall clumps of flowers that were pink and red and mauve and blossoms. In the meadow there were thousands of buttercups. There, Mr. Wonka said, dancing up and down and pointing at his gold-topped cane at the great brown river. It's all chocolate. Every drop of that river is hot melted chocolate of the finest quality, the very finest quality. There's enough chocolate in there to fill every bathtub in the country. And all the swimming pools as well. Isn't it terrific? And just look at my pipes. They're sucking up the chocolate and carrying it away into the other rooms in the factory where it is needed. Thousands of gallons an hour. Oh, my dear children, thousands and thousands of gallons. The children and their parents were too flabbergasted to speak. They were staggering. They were dumbfounded. They were bewildered, and they were dazzled. They were completely bowled over the hugeness of the whole thing. They simply stood and stared. The waterfall is the most important, Mr. Wonka went on. It mixes the chocolate, it churns it up, it pounds it, and it beats it, and it makes it light and frothy. No other factory in the world mixes its chocolate by waterfall, but it's now the only way to do it properly. The only thing is, and do you like my trees here? He pointed with his stick. And my lovely bushes, don't you think they're pretty? I told you I hated ugliness, and of course they are all edible. All made of something different and delicious. And do you like my meadow? Do you like my grass? And do you like my buttercups? The grass you are standing on, my dear little ones, is made of a new kind of soft, minty sugar that I just invented. I call it swedge. Try a blade, please do. It's delightful. Automatically, everyone bent down and picked up a blade of grass. Everyone, that is, except for Augustus Gluck, who took a big handful, and Violet Beauregard, who tasted her blade of glass, who, before tasting her blade of grass, took out her piece of world-breaking chewing gum out of her mouth and stuck it carefully behind her ear. Isn't it wonderful? Whispered Charlie. Hasn't it got a wonderful taste, Grandpa? I would eat the whole field, said Grandpa, grinning with delight. I could go around on all fours like a cow and eat every blade of grass in the field. Try a buttercup, cried Mr. Wonka. They're even nicer. Suddenly the air filled with screams of excitement. The screams came from Veruca Salt. She was pointing frantically to the other side of the river. Look! Over there, she screamed. What is it? He's moving. He's walking. It's a little person. It's a little man. Down there, below the waterfall. Everybody stopped picking buttercups and stared across the river. She's great, Grandpa, said Charlie. It is a little man. Can you see him? I see him, Charlie, said Grandpa Joe. And now everyone started shouting at once. There's 2 of them. Oh, my gosh. So there is. There's more than 2. There's 3, 4, 5. What are they doing? Where did they come from? Who are they? Children and parents alike rushed down to the side of the river to get a closer look. Aren't they fantastic? No higher than my knee. Look at them and look at their funny long hair. The tiny men, who were no larger than a medium-sized doll, had stopped what they were doing and were now staring back across the river at the visitors. One of them pointed towards the children, and then he whispered something into all 4, and the 5 of them burst out into peals of laughter. But they can't be real people, Charlie said. Of course they're real people, Mr. Wonka said. They're Oompa Loompas. Chapter 16, the Oompa Loompas. Oompa Loompas, everyone said at once. Oompa Loompas. Imported directly from Loompaland, said Mr. Wonka proudly. There's no such place, said Mrs. Salt. Excuse me, my dear lady, but Mr. Wonka, said Mrs. Salt, I'm a teacher of geography. Then you'll know all about it, said Mr. Wonka, and oh, what a terrible country it is. Nothing but thick jangles infested by the most dangerous beasts in the entire world. Hogswogglers and snogwagglers and those terrible Wicked Wongdoodles. A Wongdoodle would eat 10 Oompa Loompas for breakfast and come galloping back for a second helping. When I went out there, I found the little Oompa Loompas living in tree houses. They had to live in tree houses to escape the Wazdoodles and the Hornswagglers and the Snozzwagglers, and they were practically starving to death. They were living on green caterpillars, and the caterpillars tasted revolting. And the Oompa Loompas spent every moment of their days climbing through the treetops, looking for other things to mash up with the caterpillars to make them taste better. Red beetles, for instance, and eucalyptus leaves, and the bark of a bong-bong tree. All of them beastly, but not quite so beastly as the caterpillars. Poor little Oompa Loompas. The one food that they longed for more than anything was the cocoa bean, and they couldn't get it. And Oompa Loompa was lucky if he found 3 or 4 cocoa beans a year. But oh, how they craved them. They used to dream of cocoa beans at night and talk about them all day. You only had to mention the word cocoa to an Oompa Loompa, and he would start dribbling at the mouth. The cocoa bean, Mr. Wonka continued, which grows on the cocoa tree, happens to be the thing from which chocolate is made. You cannot make chocolate without the cocoa bean. The cocoa bean is chocolate. I myself use billions of cocoa beans every week in the factory, and so, my dear children, as I discovered that Oompa Loompas were crazy for this particular food, I climbed up into their treehouse village and poked my head in through the door of their treehouse and talked to the leader of the tribe. The poor little fellow looked thin and starved and was sitting there trying to eat a bowl of mashed up caterpillars without being sick. Look here, I said, speaking not in English, of course, but in Oompa Loompish. Look here, if you all want to come back to my country and live in my factory, you can have all the cocoa beans you want. I've got mountains of them in my storehouses. And you can have cocoa beans for every meal. You can gorge yourself silly on them. I'll even pay your wages in cocoa beans if you wish. You really mean it? Said the Oompa Loompas. Leader, leaping from the chair. Of course I mean it, I said. And you can have chocolate as well. Chocolate tastes even better than cocoa beans. The little man gave a great whoop of joy and threw his bowl of mashed caterpillars right out the treehouse window. It's a deal, he said. Come on, let's go. So I shipped them over here, every man, every woman, every child in the Oompa Loompa tribe. It was easy. I smuggled them into large packing cases with holes in them, and they got here safely. They are all wonderful workers, and they speak English now. They love dancing and music. They are always making up songs. I expect you will hear a good deal of singing today from time to time. I must warn you, though, they are rather mischievous. They tell jokes, and still wear the same kind of clothes they wore in the jungle. They insist upon it. The men, as you can see across the river, wear only deerskins. The women wear leaves, and the children wear nothing at all. The women use fresh leaves every day. Daddy, shouted Veruca Salt, the girl who got everything she wanted. Daddy, Daddy, I want an Oompa Loompa. I want an Oompa Loompa. I want an Oompa Loompa right away. I want you to take one home with me. Go on, Daddy. Go get me an Oompa Loompa. Now, my pet, as her father said. We mustn't interrupt Mr. Wonka. But I want an Oompa Loompa, screamed Veruca Salt. All right, Veruca, all right. But I can't get one for you this very second. Please be patient. I'll see that you have one before the day is out. Augustus, shouted Mrs. Gloop. Augustus, sweetheart. I don't think you'd better do that. Augustus Gloop, as you might have guessed, had quite quietly sneaked down to the edge of the river and was now kneeling on the riverbank, scooping hot melted chocolate into his mouth as fast as he could. Next.